Welcome to the Disruptors Creed podcast. I'm honestly shocked you're here, but since you are, let's go. Today, I'm talking with Stephen Shedletzky about what it really takes to create a speak up culture. We get into leadership, psychological safety, and how disruption isn't about causing chaos. It's about caring enough to say the hard things. Shed's story is powerful. His insights are gold. And if you lead people, or you want to, this episode will hit you right where it needs to. Here we go. Today's guest is someone who lives and breathes the mission of this show, questioning the status quo, challenging silence, and making the world a better place by making people braver. Stephen Shedletzky, affectionately known as Shed, is the author of Speak Up Culture and a globally recognized voice on leadership, psychological safety, and building courageous teams. Through his company, Shed Inspires, he now works with leaders and organizations to build speak up cultures where trust, connection, and humanity drive performance, not fear or compliance. Today, we are talking about what it really takes to create a speak up culture, how to disrupt fear and complacency in leadership, and why using your voice, even when it shakes, is one of the most powerful forms of disruption there is. So let's dive in. Shed, welcome to the Disruptors Creed podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to be here with you and your listeners.
Yes. Well, so we first met through our mutual friend, Michael Neela. And since that time, I started researching you. I saw your name everywhere. And that makes perfect sense given that you are leading a movement to help leaders and teams embrace truth telling in organizations. And so the first thing I want to know is your book, Speak Up Culture, is all about creating environments where people can feel safe and heard in their organizations. What sparked your passion for this topic? Was there a personal moment that made it all click for you?
Yes. Next question, please. No, I'm kidding.
And that's it. That's a wrap.
Yeah, and that's the podcast. So absolutely yes, and I'm a big believer, Kristen, that leadership is deeply personal. And so effective leaders do lead from a place inside. So I have had a series of experiences that definitely caused me to make this a passion point. And as I was finishing up the book, I came across a quote from the Danish theologian Soren Kierkegaard that says, "Life makes sense looking backwards, but it must be lived forwards." And so that old hindsight is 2020. It's why the interview question, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" is a silly question. It's not the answer that matters. It's the thinking process that gives us value. But there's sort of two fundamental personal experiences that caused me to write the book. One was I grew up with a stutter. I still do have a stutter. I've learned how to manage it. I married a speech therapist, which was a good choice. Mostly for my kids and nieces and nephews, I've figured out all the tips and tricks that I need for the time being, and jokes on me, I speak for a living. But I know intimately and can think of like clear moments in my childhood. There was a moment in grade 2. There is definitely a moment in grade 6 where I couldn't say the word très in French class. And as a Canadian, like très is the third frickin' word you learn in French. It's just a harsh word. And that moment of embarrassment and that moment of voicelessness caused me to get help and work on it. And it was a good sort of, I don't think I really got over my fear of public speaking until my early to mid 20s. So it was a good sort of 10, 15-year journey to really get some skills and tools and overcome it. And then, in my near 20-year career now, both with teams I've been a part of, as well as with organizations and teams I've supported and worked with, I've had the privilege, honor, horror of seeing a large gamut of teams and cultures and dynamics. I've seen teams that have a speak up culture and it's fantastic. I've been parts of teams that have a speak up culture, and it's marvelous. The depth and breadth of what we can discuss, the quality of the relationships. I still have best friends to this day that we worked on teams together 10 years ago, and we have this amazing relationship and bond, even though we're very different and diverse and have different
Yeah.
views and beliefs and backgrounds. But we shared and developed this amazing relationship because of this team. And of course, the quality of the decisions and the results and the innovation. I've yet to come across a team that openly claims we don't have a speak up culture and we don't care to have one. I haven't seen that one yet. I mean, maybe Amazon a little in their sort of public ruthlessness, but I have come across teams that they claim to have a speak up culture and then don't. And you
Yeah.
say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time in the wrong way or whatever it was, and as if there's a rug being pulled out from under you, you sort of very quickly become corporately naked, or you very quickly become private enemy number one, or that gazelle that is sick and diseased and is pushed out to the outside of the pack. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there where I spoke up convinced and feeling that I was doing the right thing for the right reasons for the benefit of a team and an organization. And lo and behold, I got punished and sacrificed for it. And I went, whoa,
Yeah.
what's up with that? And so that
Yeah.
really, that sort of shook my real passion for this, because I've seen the sort of spectrum of having a speak up culture and not.
Going back to when you said that you have a speech impediment, there is there are so many reasons why people don't speak up. I mean, I call it the dog that does not bark. When you have people in your organization that don't speak up, and you bring up something interesting there, because we have people that are invited into meetings that are maybe silent, and we don't give that a second thought. And what you underscore there is that there are so many reasons why people don't speak up, notwithstanding perhaps it's a culture where they just can't, or they'll, yeah, like you said, get the rug pulled out from them or get their head bit off. But there's also some other impediments that people have, one of which is being very timid, perhaps an impediment or something that makes them feel self-conscious, or that they might open themselves up to judgment. For me, for so long, I was thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to, perhaps appear as a contrarian if I ask a question. And I certainly don't want to do that. So many reasons. And so I want to talk about the culture before we talk about leadership. I want to talk about just individuals, and part of the reasons why they don't speak up. So I think that's important. But then you said that you have been a part of organizations on both ends of the spectrum. So what makes it
Mm.
so you can speak up? So what gives a voice to those who are afraid, or insert the reason here? How do you create? It's a big question. It's a mighty mission to create a culture. So what are some of the things leaders do to encourage people?
So it's a few. I mean, it's so much, but let's make it as simple as and accessible and actionable as possible. So there are a couple things that you're pointing to. One is just the baggage we bring,
Hmm.
which could be personal baggage or cultural baggage. There are some cultures where you don't challenge authority. A lot of Asian
Hmm.
cultures, you just don't
Hmm.
do it. But yet we can create in the context of an organization. I like to think of organizations like a pickle jar, right? You can put a world class cucumber that's crunchy, juicy, delicious, all the things, hardworking, talented, ethical. Put that cucumber in a bad pickle brine, you get a bad pickle, but you can't blame the cucumber. You have
Yeah.
to examine the brine. And
Yeah.
so, a few things here. One, the two sort of questions and the dynamic that creates a speak up culture is it psychologically safe? Right?
Hmm.
That's the first one. The second question is it worth it? And that second question is one that has yet to be explored as much in academic and research as the first one. We know psychological safety matters. Psychological safety and team psychological safety is described by Amy Edmondson, a brilliant Harvard scholar, as an environment in which people feel that they can take interpersonal risk. Absolutely. But another piece is it worth it? Right?
Mhm.
So it can feel safe, but not necessarily worth it. What that dynamic looks like. So let's say you and I are best friends and we go back 35 years, and you see that I'm behaving in a way that's getting in the way of my own success, health, fulfillment, whatever. You form an intervention, you build the courage, you speak up, even if there is fear, and it goes so well.
Mhm.
We end in a hug. We're in tears. I'm so thankful. I commit and I promise that I'm going to change. And over the next 3 months, I successfully do nothing to change any of my habits or any of my behavior. And you go, huh, maybe I didn't do it right. And I'm going to enroll more friends and family. And we're going to do another intervention. And it couldn't have gone better. And I successfully do nothing to implement anything. Still psychologically safe, but futile, right?
Yeah.
And so apathy is going to set in. It just isn't worth it. You're going to have me make my bed and sleep in it too. The other dynamic, so okay, we want it to be safe. We want it to be worth it, right? Worth it means that we speak up and we feel heard, that we matter. It doesn't mean that all of our ideas need to be implemented,
Mhm.
but it means that the risk to speak up was still worth it. It led to some sort of positive outcome or change, which is a change occurred, or I still feel that I matter, or we're still making progress, right?
Yeah.
And the way to do it is you encourage folks to speak up and you reward them when they do.
Yeah.
Um, Encourage is we behave in a way that leads people to believe that my choice to use my voice, the risk and discomfort it can be, not all the time, but oftentimes to use our voice is worth it. And then when you do use your voice, even if it's imperfect, even if it isn't the right time or in the perfect way, you're still rewarded. You're given more airtime. What this means is it doesn't mean an extrinsic reward like a pay raise, a bonus, a promotion, or a statue made in
Mhm.
your honor in town hall. Those things might come. I'm not sure about the statue. That's a tall order. It's more
Mhm.
intrinsic, you know.
Mhm. Sure.
So before you and I hopped on, you shared that you recently spoke up in a meeting, right? Even if you speak up and it's controversial or it didn't come out the right way or was imperfect, a
Mhm.
reward is tell me more.
Mhm.
A reward is thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the courage that you just did that you just displayed to push and help us, right? Or even this is a reward. Kristen, I'm not yet sure what you're getting at, but I think you might be onto something.
Yeah.
Can you share more, or how did you get to that conclusion? Or what did you mean by? These are all rewards, right?
Sure.
Now, a speak up culture isn't just the same people speaking up about the same things all the time. That's oversharing and that's sucking up. That's not speaking up. Um, but so long as we're encouraging and rewarding folks for quality contributions, even if unpopular or personal or imperfect, that's how we do it. And I'm happy to get into more specifics and details, especially around how to make it as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you just described and what I was sharing with you about the meeting where I spoke up, I can tell you that I left feeling as though I will never speak up again because I didn't feel like it was well received. And so that's what I want to go back to when you say, is it worth it? And what is there punishment to one extreme? And I have been on the receiving end of that kind of punishment or disdain. I come from a law enforcement background and paramilitary, which is what we love to call ourselves, even though we are not military whatsoever.
Hmm.
But there is most definitely a hierarchical, and rank is everything. And I consider myself a very curious person, not a rebel. I just need to know the why behind the do. And in one operational meeting, I spoke up and just said, "Excuse me, can you explain why we're doing this aspect of it?" And I was pulled aside after, and I was told that I ambushed this individual. I was a sergeant, and he was a rank or two above me. And I thought, oh my gosh, the word ambush was used. How I ambushed you, I was just asking a question. And and this is why when you say, is it worth it? It's like we put the onus on the individuals in the organization to speak up. Oh my gosh, I have an open door policy, and I'm going to go and throw some air quotes right there real hard. I have an
Yeah.
open door policy, and you're welcome anytime. And what happens? We learn very quickly when we walk into that open door and we give an opinion, a thought, a criticism, a comment, a suggestion, and it's met with one, defensiveness, or absolutely not, we can't do that. We walk away and we realize we are never going to do that again. And
Mm.
then, something else you said really, uh, I want to bold and emphasize that too, is that not everything can be implemented. So that was when I was a subordinate, and then I became the chief of my organization, and I vowed this: if ever I make a decision, I promise you, my people, that you can come up to me and ask me, why did you make that decision? And if I can't give you a reason, rattle off the reasons that I came to this decision, or better yet, have already told you in perhaps a mass email so you understand. But if I can't do that, then I have no business making a decision. And I want you to ask. And so, people will absolutely become silent when you don't reward that. And so I think there's just so much here, because we expect people to speak up, but then it's actually our leaders that shut it down. But here's what I was getting at: is you said you can't grant every wish, you can't
Mm.
give every suggestion. And there's a balance there between the holding people accountable, and the responsibility the leader has, that maybe it violates budget, contract, you name it, what have you. So talk about that, is like when you do go and there's a lot of no's that you hear.
Mm. Oh, you're making me think of so many things. So I might want to backtrack and add a couple more things, and then we'll see if we
Go.
can get to this
Yeah.
question as well. So one, who know it hurt walking into open doors. There's so many open doors, and ouch, it hurts to walk into them. Um, so what's coming to mind here is that so much of this is an interplay and a dance of the messiness of what it means to be human and to communicate. No leader is perfect, no subordinate is perfect, no person is perfect. There are some tools that can help. So one tool that comes to mind actually comes from comedian Craig Ferguson, and I think he's actually describing his failed third relationship or his failed third marriage. Anyway, but there's relevance to all of us. The questions are: does this need to be said right now and by me?
Hmm.
And that's just a really good discernment tool, especially when there's rank, when there's hierarchical dynamics. So that's just like a really good one. So one is, does it need to be said? I've heard the secret to a happy marriage is leave at least one thing unsaid every single day. I don't feel comfortable with that advice, but I can't say it's wrong. But like,
Yeah.
that's a good question. Does this need to be said? Right now, there's often things that don't need to be said, bank, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, it needs to be said. Does it need to be said now in this
Hmm.
context, in this meeting with these people, right? Yes or no? Does it need to be said by me?
Hmm.
And so those are just like a good set of filtered questions. A really interesting scenario is, this needs to be said right now and most definitely not by me. Those are rare. Um,
Interesting.
those are rare. And that's only like stakes are high. We're
Hmm.
about to say go on launching rockets, and like I have to say something because I
Yeah.
think people are going to die. That's a good one where like I'm willing to put someone on the spot, right?
Hmm.
Um, but that's just like a fun set of litmus tests, because maybe in that scenario, it would have been good to ask a friend first or approach that senior leader
Hmm.
one on one, as opposed to the dynamic of we don't challenge our leaders in public.
Yeah.
I don't know, right?
The only
Um,
thing I would push back there, and I don't even
yes.
know if this is a pushback, but if I did that, if I used that internal dialogue and said, "Does this need to be said and by me?" I would talk myself out of it 100% of the time, because I would be like, "Oh no, I'll just shut my mouth. Someone else can say it." So that would just be me. I would think, I don't think I want to ruffle the feathers or ask the question.
Yeah, and it's also the, I mean, all of this is a practice as well.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
sometimes you might be sitting in a meeting and you're like, I think I have something to say. I'm just, nah,
Yeah.
right? But
Right.
then check in with a friend. Hey, in that meeting, kind of wanted to ask this question, or I kind of wanted to say this. Like, what do you think? They're like, yeah, that would have been good.
Yeah.
And so, like, your courage and
Yeah.
bravery muscle builds a bit. And then you might even think, maybe it isn't relevant or appropriate or the best time or place to do it in the meeting of 50 folks or 20 folks or 5 folks. Like, how can I do a modest, reasonable test to try to go down this line of curiosity, whether it's one on one or in a smaller group or in an email or something? Because
Mhm.
speaking up isn't always using our actual voice in a
Mhm.
meeting of 50 people. It can also be in an email, or it
Yeah.
can be in a one-on-one meeting. So it's just thinking of other ways as well of how can I be most successful with what I'm trying to get at here, which
Mm.
it sounds like it's also steeped in the success of the organization.
Yeah.
Um,
I like what you said there about giving an alternative because I also find that I can sit with things and make sense of them when I write it down, where
mm,
instead of blurting something out to question or challenge or give my opinion on something, if I sit down and formulate an email, and I've done this many times after the fact, I find that my thoughts are far more measured and I can really make sense of what I'm trying to say and be more articulate. So I love that, giving our listeners the idea that speak up doesn't necessarily have to be with with your physical voice, but you can, whatever your strong point is, you can use another avenue to send that message. So that's a
yeah,
good thought.
yeah. Speaking up doesn't always have to look like activism all the time.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
a form of, but
Yeah.
it is not the only. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Okay. So that what you just said. So there's this idea. This is what I wanted to have you on because what I talk about is disrupting the status quo. Disruption gets a bad rap. And like what you just said, it doesn't always have to be, this thing that could be adversarial. To me, disruption is not taking the chainsaw to everything. It is diagnosing before you prescribe. So, in creating the speak up culture, when I talk to leaders, they get very frustrated with we'll call them the disruptive malcontents, the ones that are always complaining. So, how do we drowned out or at least not give into the squeaky wheel all the time and really grab the thoughts and opinions of the really the silent majority who are
Mm.
showing up every day doing the work. And this is where I made the biggest mistake in my career when I rose to the top of my organizational chart, is that in the beginning, I spent so much time with all of the malcontents, the whiners, and it was exhausting for me. And I needed to focus on the ones who were just showing up every day. So how do we not get caught up in that as leaders?
Yeah. So I love the in any population when it comes to change or leadership or healthy culture or any of this, you always have your partners, your tourists, and your prisoners.
Okay.
And so your partners are folks who lean in, they nod their heads, what can I do to help? Or they're already helping. They're champions of the change, they're champions of the culture at their best. There's no convincing that's needed. Like
Hmm.
they're just the people that are easy and helpful and productive. Like, yay, we like these people. Typically, like you're lucky if that's 15% of your population, one
Sure.
five, right?
Hmm.
Then you have your majority who are tourists. And tourists ask permission to go use the washroom from the tour guide. Tourists are like, Someone should do something about this.
Right.
Not me, someone, right?
Someone.
Partners, leaders are the ones who go, shucks, I'm someone, I'm going to do something about this, right? And the vast majority of folks are tourists because it's safe in the tourist zone, right? Um, now there are prisoners. Prisoners are folks who typically, sit like this. For those of you who are listening on audio, my arms are crossed. I'm thinking I'm never getting this time back in my life, right? And they are the naysayers. They are the pushers, right? Now, some questioners, some naysayers, some folks who point out why things aren't going to work, really valuable, right?
Hmm.
Because they're on to something. They can be really hard for entrepreneurs or
Hmm.
visionaries or dreamers who only see vision but don't see the obstacles. some of what they're pointing out really valuable, but there are squeaky wheel, I want to be in the, traditionalists. I want to stay in the status quo. I don't want to change. That's what we're talking about. The best thing to do with those folks, to the best of our ability, is to ignore them.
Yeah.
Because in our cultures, we get the behaviors that we reward. We also get the behaviors that we tolerate and enable. And the instinct is, if only I get these loud, noisy, squeaky wheels over into tourist or partner land, then we can do these changes. But it's the wrong focus. The
Yeah.
right way to focus is, how can I find my partners, thank them, figure out what tools they need to bring tourists over into partner land? Because a good chunk of the tourists want to be part of the change. They just don't know how.
Yeah.
And so the partners who can see it and believe it and are doing it, how can we help them with tools, with communication tools, with things to try on, with actions and strategies? How can we get them over into partner land?
Yeah.
Is a big one.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's a hard muscle to train, because the loudest always get your attention, and the ones who are quieter typically don't. And you have they're considered the laggards, right? And so and I was recently speaking at a conference, and I was talking about how employees become disengaged. This is the thing that we have to fight. Disengagement is, 51% of our employees are disengaged, according to a recent Gallup poll, and 13% are actively disengaged. So how do we bring them from disengaged to just, to actively, to just the regular amount of disengaged, or just, just bring them over, as you've just described, bring them over to, maybe not partner, but just, somewhere. And I was talking about this, as what happens when you have, I call it, like I said, the dog that does not bark, is who are you not inviting to the table, and whose opinions are you not soliciting. So this gentleman stood up, and he's like, I've got a question. And he said, first, it's a little story. And he said, I went to my boss. So he's second in command in his organization. And he went to his boss and he said, I'm going to put out a suggestion box where people can bring their thoughts and ideas. And his boss said, don't do it. Do not do it. Trust me, do not do it. And here is why. You said you are going to take suggestions, and you're not going to be able to implement all those suggestions, and people are going to be more pissed off than they were before you asked for their voice. And he said, what am I supposed to do? And I stood there and I struggled with this answer. And I said, I think data and facts matter. And so I said, transparency matters. You build trust by showing, here's the suggestions or the comments that we've received, put them in some sort of visual that people
Shareable,
can
yeah.
click on, right? And look at and go, hey, here's all the suggestions. And you will, hopefully they're not all no. If they are, then you may be the problem, sir. But I said, but if there's a lot of yeses peppered with a couple no's, make sure that you put the no and the why in the comment section. And he's like, yeah. So I did that. And he goes, and still people are pissed off. And then I said, then this is what you have to become comfortable with: an unsatisfied customer in your organization. And I don't know if that was bad advice or not, but it kind of, like, you just sort of validated me, because you said you ignore them. And that's just such a hard thing to do, but it feels a little like that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things. So one, when we ignore the prisoners, they either self-select out or they succumb to the positive peer pressure of, it's a lot
Yes.
fun being part of creating the future than it is being stuck in the past,
Yes.
Um, the the other is, it's like, I'm often asked this question as well. What do you think of anonymous surveys or anonymous suggestion boxes or this or that or the other, and anonymous feedback? And I said, well, given the choice between receiving no feedback and anonymous feedback, I'd rather anonymous feedback.
Yeah.
If given the choice between anonymous feedback and people being willing to put their names next to it or have the conversations, I want that. But you can't just start there,
Yeah.
right? You have to build up, earn it, work toward it, and keep earning it. And so I would still rather receive anonymous suggestions or feedback or survey results than nothing, but it's then what you do with it. So I run a small little company. I also have another one at home. It's co CEO'd with my wife Julie, and we have two subordinates, our 9 and 6 year olds. Right now,
Yeah.
I care deeply that my 9 and 6 year olds and my co-leader, that we all have a great experience of our home and of our family culture. It's my most important job. I care that we all feel that we belong, that we matter, that we're nurtured for, that we feel safe, that we grow, all the things. Right now, I could send that message to my kids. Hi, Sophie, Jack, I care that you feel all these things. Kindly click on this survey link. It'll take 15 minutes of your time, fill it out, and we'll do nothing with it ever again, right? Like, my favorite survey question is, how likely do you feel that any change will occur from you spending time and filling out this survey? And if you
Mhm.
have low answers to that result, just expect that your survey response rate is just going to keep going down, right?
Yeah.
Now, the value is we get the survey results and then we do a listening tour.
Mhm.
And okay, we got these suggestions. We want to learn more. We've even opened up the inputs to the suggestion box, and we're allowing all employees to upvote or downvote these suggestions.
Mhm.
Radical, right?
Mhm.
Um, but how do I then take my kids for a walk or a car ride or take them out for ice cream and say, hey, we received the survey results. These are the themes that we saw. What are we missing? What's your experience? How can we make things better? It doesn't mean we're going to implement everything.
Sure.
And if we can't, we will tell you why. Like, my daughter's now on this kick that if the Toronto Maple Leafs, by the time this comes out, they might be eliminated from the playoffs. But if they win the Stanley Cup, she's convinced we're getting a dog. To which I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm happy to make that bet because it's not going to happen. But if it
Mhm.
does, I'm going to have to
Sure.
disappoint her.
Mhm.
So there is space and grace to be human and transparent. Um, but yeah, this stuff is messy. It can be messy.
Yeah, it's so funny. That's a great point to bring up. Sometimes there is and does have to be a committee of one. And I found myself in those situations many times where I sought input from as many people as I could. But then, as we know, that input is often contradictory and everyone has different opinions on how the system and the process should work. And so I took it all into consideration. And then there was a committee of one. I had to make a decision because being indecisive is, a mark of a poor leader.
Yeah.
There was something so okay. So what we have deducted so far is that we have, we're, I think it's our innate need to speak up, and I think that
Mm.
I think you could disagree with me on that, but I think most of us want to share our opinion when we walk into our friend group or when we're, in a comfortable place, as you mentioned, a psychological safety, a place where we feel safe. So most of us, it's kind of innate in us to, to offer our opinion, notwithstanding again some, an affliction that keeps us from doing that. And
Hmm.
so it's not so much the followers as it is the leaders that set the tone, because people quickly find out that I can't speak up here as much as I want to. I've tried and it's backfired, and I've been attacked for it, villainized, scolded, or even worse. What I hear from people is, and this is worse, is when you bring your thought and your opinion and it goes to literally an abyss. Like, a leader doesn't even respond to you. I've heard so many people talk about that, and that it's worse to not get any feedback or any kind of response. I would rather them say, screw you, we're not doing this, but it's ignoring. But here's what I'm getting to is that, so the leader we know sometimes is the all the time is the one that is going to set that tone. So I was listening to um Simon Sinek's podcast, and on the podcast he had the CEO of Airbnb. Forgive me, I forget his name, but he's been the CEO forever and ever. And he said this, and it completely, like, it messed up all my molecules. He said, listen, he said, the problem that we get into is that we hire people, and there's this certain culture that I have, that the way that I lead, and if they're not in alignment with this culture, then there's a disconnect, right? And he said, so maybe it behooves us as leaders to say things like, listen, if you come work for me, I want to let you know that I'm going to call you after 7 p.m. I'm going to call you during dinner, and I want you to pick up the phone. I'm going to call you on weekends. Also, I'm going to be making most of the decisions. Like, set the culture for I don't care what you say. He said, because if you basically tell it like it is I'm not a leader that's going to take a lot of other people's opinions into account, and I'm going to expect you all of these things. He's like, wouldn't that just be better than all of these people? And I was like, whoa. I mean, I kind of, to your point, you've never ever heard a leader say, I don't have an open door policy. Everything is closed. I've never heard that, but I thought maybe that could work. Listen, I'm a real jerk and I'm not going to take anything you say into consideration. And it made me laugh. And I don't know if that's a thing, but maybe it's worth an experiment for someone.
I mean, at least it's transparent. And I think Brian Chesky is the name of the Airbnb CEO. So if it's him, yeah. So here's I don't necessarily agree with we have innate need to speak up. I
Okay.
do think we have an innate need to feel heard, that we matter, and we definitely have an innate need to feel safe. And safety looks different to all of us. Um, I also think we have an innate need or want or desire to know what to expect. I mean, some
Mhm.
of us are more adventurous and like surprises more than others, but I think like there's a dissonance to the example that you're sharing from Brian Chesky of, it's like a family here.
Right.
We have a truly human culture, and then
Right.
you join and it's completely different. This is
Mhm.
also the challenge of, I've met and worked with people from organizations where the organization has a great reputation, but
Mhm.
just because an organization has a great reputation doesn't mean that every single person in that organization loves the
Right.
experience. Similarly, you can have, or on the contrary, you can have an organization that has a terrible reputation, but you have a great little microcosm of it. You have a great
Yeah.
leader, you have an awesome high trust and high performing team. It may not last forever because teams and people shift and move. But like, our experience and our dynamic is always what's closest to us, notwithstanding the fact that as leaders we have influence, and as a leader a whisper is a shout and a tiptoe is a stomp. So go the leader or
Mhm.
leaders, it influences that culture of what goes and what doesn't go. um
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, it would be better to say, hey, you're going to join this team. I'm going to call you at these hours. I'm going to behave in these ways. Like,
Right.
this is just what it's going to be. You can either sign up or you can say no thanks. But we
Yeah.
don't like bad surprises.
Yeah, I would love to like find the person that's like, you know what, that sounds amazing. Like I'd love to work for a person that just doesn't care what I think. I don't know. I just think it's a worthy experiment. It's funny.
I think there's a good SNL or improv skit on that
Totally.
interview of like, hey, I'm a micromanager and these are the things that I'm going to do. And people are like, yeah, great. Like, I appreciate the transparency. Let's do this. Yeah, yeah,
I'm totally in. I'm flying your flag. Exactly.
yeah.
So a lot of the things that I write about in I put out a weekly blog every Monday, and I just call them brain droppings because that's all they are. They're just, if I read an article, it makes me think about something, and it's almost always because the message is what I need to hear in the moment. The things that I'm tackling or the things that I'm researching are the things that I need to hear. You write about speaking up. Are there times that you still battle this? Are there times when you lose your voice? I mean,
Oh,
what rattles you or makes you hesitate to speak up? And even now,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so it's interesting. So, I mean, I remember again, we were meeting before we started sharing, and you shared this experience where you spoke up, and you're like, and you said, I'm never going to speak up again in that context with those people. It doesn't mean you're
Mhm.
never going to speak up again ever, right?
Right.
Again, culture's pickle brine. So I remember um, I was working on the book and writing the book, and I was on a team at the same time, and one of the people on the team was like, "You're the speak up guy. You should speak up." And I'm like, "You're missing the point. Like, speak up isn't an instruction. Speak up is a
Mhm.
culture." And
Yeah,
so, are there times that I hesitate or don't speak up, or I'm really careful with my words? Yeah, of course, because it needs to be safe and it needs to be worth it. If it
yeah,
is not safe and it is not worth it, that is an unhappy marriage of psychological danger and apathy. And I
yeah,
sure as hell am not speaking up because I'm only going to get in trouble.
sure.
Um, and nothing positive is going to happen. I think that's still the opportunity. I mean, I've been, since you reached out and we were starting to work on this, I've been following your Instagram, and I know the question prompt of what's pissing you off, right?
Mhm,
The question, what's pissing you off, is a good question because it drives disruption. It's like, what do you want to
mhm,
change? Like, are you
mhm.
ready to be done being pissed off about that? Are you
That's
like,
right.
if you're saying no
Mhm,
to that, what are you saying yes to? Right.
mhm, yeah.
And so, yeah, the
Ooh,
short answer to the question, do I hesitate to speak up sometimes? Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, and yeah, of course, and we all do. I mean, but you just made me think about something because that whole part of that disruption it's what is stirring inside you. Is it something in your life? Is it a relationship that you know that no longer serves you, that you need to leave? What are you pissed off about? What are you stuck in life? But what I have found is, especially in organizations, is that people will just complain. They will just complain. And that's great because that's a speak up culture. They complain and they whine. But then I got to a point in leadership where I said, that's great. And this is why the whole "what are you pissed off today" segment was born. Is that's great that you're pissed off about it. But now question two is, what are you going to do about it? And so finally, as the leader of my organization, I said, I love it when you come at me with everything that is wrong, but also, do you have an idea?
yeah,
Because you are also responsible in this organization for the culture. And a lot of times we place the onus on the leader of the organization and we say, you, ma'am or sir, must set the culture and the tone. And what we realize or fail to realize is that we, every single one of us from line level, no formal authority, actually sets the culture. And so I dubbed it in my organization. I said, I'll tell you what, if something's wrong, best idea wins. Come up with a solution. And if you don't have a solution, elicit others. And hey, maybe
yeah.
we can put our heads together. So that's perhaps is something a leader can do as well. Instead of you're just coming at me with problems, but not one of you has a solution. I'm not smarter than any of you.
Yeah. Well, this is part of where organizational culture, it values behaviors guidelines, can help. Meaning, there's a fine line and point where complaining turns into venting, turns into commiserating, turns into just negative spiral, right? Now, I don't think we ever should aim to have an organization that takes pride on diminishing an emotional experience or a human experience.
Right.
But I think there's this fine line. So I was taught this philosophy in a leadership development program once that I love. It's called meet, point, dance.
Okay.
And in the conversation of how do I get people to change? How do I get people to come be part of where I want to go? Well, first you have to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
So if someone comes to you with a complaint, great. I have a philosophy that I was taught by a mentor. Behind every complaint is a commitment, right?
Mhm.
But if you
Oh,
come to
I love
me,
that.
if you come to me with a complaint, I can't just go, great, Kristen, what are you going to do about it? Like, well, I'm going to do like, screw you. Like, what the heck? Like,
Okay,
I'm pissed
fair,
off,
fair.
right?
Yeah,
So
fair.
you first have to meet them where they are. You have to
Yeah.
join, not necessarily with empathy, but at minimum with compassion
Mhm.
where they are. A great way to do this, I've heard this from Dr. Becky Kennedy, who's a brilliant child psychologist, does great work. Good Inside is her book. Um, when a kid or someone on your team or anyone comes to you with a complaint or something negative, you can follow a script. I'm
Okay.
so glad you've brought this to my attention. I'm so glad that you're sharing this with me. That's one. Two, I
Mhm.
believe you. Three, tell me more.
Okay.
Like, that's the best way to diffuse someone coming at you who's pissed off. Like, if I come at you and I'm pissed off and you're like, thank you so much for sharing this with me. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, this is already going better than I thought,
Right.
right? I was
Yeah.
ready for a battle or for you, I believe you. Oh wow, I feel validated in my experience. Tell
Yeah.
me more, right? And it
Yeah.
just opens it up. Now, once I've met you and I can go, you're valid to feel that way. I don't feel that way. I view it differently, but
Mhm.
based upon your experience and what you've shared, I can absolutely see where you are absolutely justified to feel the way that you feel. Are you
Mhm.
willing to come entertain a different point of view? Are you willing to see what might be possible? Can we make it happen together? The other sentiment, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions, is the worst freaking advice you can give anyone, because sometimes we don't know. And I love your point of, see if you can brainstorm with others.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's just like, I see this issue. I don't know what to do about it. I think it's worth bringing this issue forward. Can we have a productive conversation about it? That spirit
Yeah.
of, I'm willing to get to the place where we can be productive and not just point out that there is a black dot on a white wall.
Yeah, that really resonates because what you're saying is back right to a human being's innate need to just feel heard. And I think a reasonable human being knows, understands that you can't solve all of the problems, but they just want to feel validated as though you have heard and understood them. And this is been something that I have had to work on very hard in my personal life because I am a problem solver by nature. I've
Mm,
been a cop
mm.
for 30 years. When you come at me with a problem, I'm like, let's fix this, right? I'm
Yeah.
very action oriented. And I'm also very pragmatic and brain centered. And so when I'm with someone who's heart centered and they're like, no, I don't want you to solve the problem. I just want you to sit here with me in the mud. And that has been something that I have had to really, really train myself just to sit and listen without offering, okay, well, here's what I think you should do, and that's my problem. That's my
Yeah.
biggest problem.
Yeah. But this is the power of, like, curiosity is a superhuman power that is
Yeah.
available to us all. And the gateway to curiosity is open-ended questions. So
Yeah.
when someone, I mean, you like powerful questions like, what conversation are we in? Right? Or powerful questions like, what do you need from me right now? Or how
Mm,
can I be most helpful? And
yeah.
someone says, I just need to vent. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then you can say, what do you need now? A hug. I can give you that. You know, what do you need
Yeah.
now? A solution. I have a few ideas. Do you want to hear
Yes.
them? And they're like,
Yes.
no, you know,
There's a time and a place,
you
right? And they
know,
might want it later, but they're not ready for it. Yes. Within my tribe of people, I say, do you want me to tell you the truth or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear right now? And a lot of times it's just what I want to hear right now. And then that's my
yeah,
cue.
yeah,
Just,
yeah,
just exactly. Just agree with you. Right.
yeah, 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 for sure.
So I subscribe to Seth Godin's daily newsletter, and he recently wrote about the thrill of someone reading your mind, a person or a system just getting you exactly what you need, right? And I thought about that in terms of the speak up culture, but I also thought of it in terms of where we also fail as leaders, but not intentionally. And that is where we have an idea or a vision for something, and we tell our people that we love and trust to help me carry out this system, process, vision, what have you. And we fail to communicate the vision that's in our head.
Mm,
And I can illustrate this very simply by using my son as an example. He is an amazing hobbyist chef, and he was visiting me here in Naples. He's 24, and he was going to prepare a dessert. And he said, hey, when you run to the store, do me a favor, grab me some coconut milk. And I said, okay. And I got to the store, and Shed, I don't know if you've ever purchased coconut milk in your life, but when you get to the store, there are 42 different kinds of coconut milk. There's your sweetened, your unsweetened, your condensed, your chunky, you name it, what have you. And I stood there and I thought to myself, I could buy a bunch of different kinds and take them home, but in this moment, I realized he did not give me his vision. I don't know what the finished product or the recipe looks like. So I stood there thinking, what are my options here? Buy all of them, or wait a minute, now as a follower in this moment, I can clarify, right? So I called Jake and I said, what? There are 42 different kinds. He starts laughing. He's like, give me this kind. And so we sometimes unintentionally fail as leaders because we think that people will read our mind. And so a lot of times this isn't it's not leaders that are just so against a culture of speaking out. They just don't understand that people can't see. So what is your remedy for that thoughtful leader who just needs to get people on the same page, to get them to speak up?
Well, so I mean, it takes thoughtfulness and more work.
Hmm.
um, because it's hard to taste the water that we swim in if we're a fish, So, um, I mean, I understand the example. I've been thinking of, you know, sometimes I will do the grocery shopping and I'll usually take the list that my wife has prepared. But I've now learned
Yes.
that I look at the list and I'm like, it says onions, but there are many different kinds of onions. If you were doing this, you know what type of onions you want. I don't. So like,
Right.
are we talking green? Are like
Yeah.
what onions, right? So um I think though that
Mhm.
context is king. Context matters so much. And so by the time that we make a decision, or by the time we give instruction or we make a request, there's so much thinking that we've done that sometimes it behooves us to go, does it make sense for me to share with you what got us to this point? Like,
Right.
what context is missing? And sometimes we can land that plane and nail it without it being asked for. But I
Mhm.
also think there's a great opportunity for a leader to open up and say, okay, that's the plan or that's what I want. But like, where are you lost? Or
Right.
should I have started in a different place? Or, it's that context to what conversation are we in or what got us here that
Mhm.
takes thoughtfulness and can be exhausting, especially if you feel like you have to repeat yourself over and over. But
Right.
that's part of the work of leadership.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned it takes a lot of time. And that's what leaders have to understand. Because I do get a lot of leaders that say, I don't have time to break down everything. People should just know their job. They should just know exactly what to do. And my response is actually it's the time that you take on the front end to draw the picture of your vision and illustrate it in the best way that you possibly can. And also let people fill in the missing pieces with their own skills, talent, creativity. Maybe there's something that you are missing there. So I think that that's an important point to make. Is not always are you going to have a clear vision, but you take the time and you do the best you can to illustrate that.
Yeah,
So there is switching gears here. You wrote something on page 185 of your book that I just
I
love.
did.
You did. And I'm going to read it to you. You
Okay.
said the two most powerful forces in humanity are hope and each other. If you have hope, you can see the light, or you know that there's light somewhere, even if you can't see it yet. And as humans, we aren't designed to go it alone. And I would love for you just to unpack that because, once again, the pushback that I get, especially in my industry, and I understand this pragmatically, is that hope is not a strategy. And I just think, my God, without hope, what do we have? So, can you just tell me your thought behind, those few sentences that you wrote? Because I just thought it was so powerful.
Well, that doesn't sound like me at all. So I'm wondering if you have the right book. No, no,
Oh
no, it
my
is.
gosh, well, you had a ghostwriter.
No, no, no. Yes, I deeply believe that. I mean, look at Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's where I really get that from, which is, and what's the quote? With a big enough why, you can overcome any how.
Hmm.
And maybe that is Frankl. Um, so hope is a belief that tomorrow can be better, even if today's hard.
Hmm.
And it might not be tomorrow. It could be a series of
Hmm.
tomorrows. Hope is not a strategy, but without a strategy, it's hard to have hope.
Yeah. Yes, right
right?
there. Yeah. Mm.
So it's both. I mean, yeah, it's important. There, speaking of Simon Sinek, there's a quote from Simon that had me quit my job when I
Mm.
was in my second job ever out of business school. And the quote was, "There's a fine." I'm going to ad lib it, but there's a
Mhm.
fine line between sacrifice and torture.
Mm.
Sacrifice is doing something for a known good with a time horizon in mind. But if one or both are missing, it can quickly become torture.
Mm.
So if we're doing something for a known good, but we don't know when it's going to happen, that can be really hard.
Yeah.
If we're doing something, we know it's going to end, but we don't know why we're doing it, that can also slip into torture. I'm not willing to get to that endpoint. But if we both know we're doing something, it's hard work, but it's for a known good, and there's a specific timeline, we can still feel motivated, have hope.
Mhm.
So yeah, hope is an ability to still look ahead and go, it's still worth it. I want to
Yeah.
keep going.
Mhm.
And each other is the mere fact that as humans, as individuals, though we have genius and strengths, we are incomplete.
Mhm.
What makes us strong as a species is the fact that we collaborate, is the fact that we have complementary and differing, diverse strengths. So shared hope and each other is what makes progress.
Oh, and I think that is a beautiful place to land this plane. And especially as it pertains to the leaders, formal leaders who are listening, is that a lot of times we think or have been told that it's really lonely at the top. And I bought into that for a very
Hmm.
short time. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is going to just be me on an island. And then when I switched my entire paradigm and leaned into the people in my organization and said things like, oh, and it's so hard for me to learn to say this, but this phrase, are you ready? I don't know. I don't know the answer, or worse, help me.
Mm.
Let's help me so we don't fail. And I will tell you the biggest lesson that I learned in being vulnerable made me a better leader, because it was in that
Mm.
moment. And that just really speaks to what you just said about connection, about other people. We need other people. And there is nothing that we do that is worth anything that we have done alone. So that's just a perfect takeaway for this conversation.
I'll just add on to that, just to put a bow on a bow, is it can be lonely at the top,
Hmm.
but it doesn't need to be. It's
Yeah.
also the value of peer networks, right? Or of a IACP or something in your line of work where you can find shared relationship. The other is, to me, vulnerability is a superpower, but not vulnerability alone. It's
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability plus context, right?
Yeah,
Because there are some things that are inappropriate for you to
for sure.
share as a leader, but vulnerability plus context, I think, can
Absolutely.
be a superpower.
I love that. Shed, where can people find and follow you and get a copy of the Speak Up Culture? Because I'm not going to
Yeah.
give them mine. I'm hoarding this.
Thank you so much. You can find me in the book in all the places. If you Google the book, Speak Up Culture, it's available at all the fine and not so fine book retailers that you're aware of. Also, check out your local library, and if it isn't there, you can request it. Um, and I believe in the all 8 billion human beings in the world. I think I'm the only Stephen Shedletzky in the world for the time being. So if you Google my name, even if you misspell it, you'll likely find me. I'm most active on LinkedIn, and you can find me at shedinspires.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, listeners, I think if there's anything to take away from this conversation and Shed's wisdom is simply this: it's that your voice matters, and speaking up isn't just brave, it's generous. It's how we disrupt broken systems, it's how we challenge outdated norms, and how we move ourselves and others forward. So keep on disrupting, my fellow disruptors, until next time. And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Disruptors Creed, where we don't do average, and we sure as hell don't do status quo. It's produced by me, Kristen Zeman, because I like to be in control of everything. Musical score is by Ethan Reardon and Jake Zeman, because talent runs deep in this gene pool. If you like what you heard, do that thing. Click subscribe, like, follow, or whatever button keeps this chaos flowing into your ears. And if you didn't like it, you probably need it more than you think. Head over to KristenZeman.com and sign up for my weekly brain droppings, where I dump thoughts, disrupt your thinking, and hopefully light a fire under your ass, all conveniently delivered to your inbox every Monday. You're welcome. Now go out there and cause some good trouble. Until next time, keep on disrupting, my fellow disruptors. Onward and upward.